Magandang araw muli sa inyo. Ngayon ay nasa pang-labing-anim na aralin na tayo ng ating basic accounting. Simulan na natin ang ating lesson. Ano ba itong nandito sa pang-labing-anim na aralin? Surprise! So, meron tayo ditong pagsusuri ng account receivable at allowance for doubtful accounts para sa pagtatala ng kaugnay na external transaction. Sa last lesson natin, pinag-aralan natin yung paano i-analyze ang cash, paano natin isusulat yung totoong halaga ng cash na meron tayo. Ngayon naman, ang titignan natin, may naka-record na tayong external transactions for accounts receivable. Ano-ano yung mga pagbabago na pwede natin i-record para malaman natin kung ano talaga yung eksaktong amount na pwede nating makolekta from our customers through sales on accounts. Sa mga pautang natin, magkano ba talaga yung makukolekta lang natin? Oo, nakalista na ganyan yung accounts receivable natin, pero lahat ba yan makukolekta? Kasi normal sa business na hindi lahat ng pinautang mo magbabayad sa iyo. May mga hindi talaga magbabayad, may mga mamamatay, mayroong mga magbabangkarote, mayroong magtatago. So, hindi lahat ng pautang natin ay makukolekta natin. Nandito na tayo sa second item ng ating unadjusted trial balance. So, hanapin ulit natin itong aking magic ball pen. Color red ulit. Sarap sa mata itong red. Meron tayo dito accounts receivable. Nung una, accounts receivable lang yan. Yan ang totoong accounts receivable natin. Pero dahil nga, nire-recognize natin yung katotohanan na hindi lahat ng pautang natin ay makokolekta natin. Meron tayong tinatawag na allowance for doubtful accounts or bad debts. Ito yung internal transaction natin. Wala yung source document. Ito external transaction natin. Wala tayong adjustment yan, except kung may mga errors. Pero itong allowance for doubtful account, ito ang nagre-require ng recording of internal transactions or adjusting entry. The total, what is an account receivable? Account receivable is the total amount of money that the business claims for goods or services, including other charges. Including other charges, kasama yung delivery expense or other expenses incidental to the delivery of the goods sold. Debt collection. So, on account yan, kautang natin yan. Consider natin yung example ng Receivable drugstore. Meron siyang accounts receivable na 10,000. Magkano ang bad debts nito? Paano ba natin ini-estimate ang allowance for doubtful accounts or allowance for bad debts? Meron tayong tinatawag na direct write-off at meron tayong tinatawag na allowance method. Yung direct write-off, wala kang sineset up na expense every end of the period. Pero kapag ka nalaman mo na siguradong na hindi na talaga makukolekta yung pautang, tsaka palang binubura dun sa accounts receivable. So, pag direct write-off, kung kailan talaga ma-determine na hindi magbabayad yung tao, tsaka palang binubura sa listahan. Or tsaka palang nagre-recognize ng expense. Dinedebit mo yung bad debts expense credit accounts receivable kaagad. Pero itong allowance method, every end of the period, magse-set up ka ng expense, unti-unti mong i-recognize ang expense. Para kapag dumating talaga na ma-determine mo na hindi na makukolekta, dun sa allowance mo yung kukuhanin. Yung allowance ang i-debit mo at ang i-credit mo ay accounts receivable, hindi na expense. So, sa pag-present ng financial statement, maganda yung presentation mo ng financial statement mo kapag allowance method kasi nadidistribute evenly yung expense dun sa mga periods. Kasi hindi naman talaga kung kailan hindi nagbayad, dun na lang talaga expense mo yun. Paano kung inutang yan noong unang matagal na? Dapat ma-recognize mo yung expense para doon sa uncollectible sa different periods of accounting. Hindi lang kung kailan hindi mo makolekta. Kasi parang yung performance mo, yung pag binasa mo yung financial statement mo, parang dun sa panahon na hindi mo nakolekta, ang pangit na kaagad ng performance ng business mo, which is not true. Kasi maganda yung takbo ng business mo dun sa panahon na yun. It so happens lang na meron kang uncollectible account na hindi nalagyan ng allowance before. So, direct write-off method. The direct write-off method is simple. The debt is written off when it becomes certain that the amount will not be collected and all collection efforts have not yielded favorable results. When the account is written off, the expense bad debt will be debited and the account receivable will be credited for the amount that are actually uncollectible to remove the receivable from the books. So, simple lang. Kapag di na talaga makukolekta, debit mo na yung expense, credit mo na yung accounts receivable. So, to illustrate the direct write-off method, assume that on January 31, 2020, Karimacor decides to write off the account of Dr. Guevara since the collection efforts have failed and that Dr. Guevara can no longer be found. The direct write-off entry is as follows. Debit bad debts expense 1,500 and credit accounts receivable 1,500. So, ganun lang kadali. Kaya hindi mo na siya makita. So, ito yung flow ng transactions. Sale on account, tapos accounts receivable siya. Hindi siya makakabayad. So, debit mo na kagad yung expense, credit na yung accounts receivable. Hindi ito, hindi ito bad debts written off. Credit na kagad dito sa accounts receivable. Accounts receivable. So, that is the direct write-off method. Kine-credit mo na kagad yung accounts receivable. So, allowance method. Unlike the direct write-off method, the allowance method records an expense to bad debt using an estimate of accounts that are unlikely to be collected before specific customer accounts are identified as being uncollectible. Kumbaga, hindi mo pa alam na hindi siya magbabayad, pero nagsiset up ka na ng allowance kasi baka nga hindi makabayad. So, every end of the period, magsiset up ka ng expense for uncollectible account. So, paano ba siniset up yung allowance for doubtful account? Kasi allowance is an estimate, diba? Pag sinabi mong allowance, hindi siya exact amount. Ano yan? Arbitrary amount. Estimate lang yan. Magkano ba dun sa accounts receivable mo ang hindi mo makukolekta? So, that will be based on historical trends, economic trends. Lalo na ngayon, pandemic, maraming hindi makakabayad. So, yung accounts receivable, allowance for doubtful accounts, tataas. Kasi maraming nawala ng trabaho, maraming hindi makakabayad. So, mas mataas yung allowance ngayon. Another form of measurement. To establish the allowance for doubtful accounts, the management considers customers that might default. So, ngayon lahat parang naka-default ang pagbabayad eh. So, meron kang sale on account. So, naka-debit yung account receivable mo, naka-credit yung sale mo. Uncollectible, hindi mo pa sure kung magiging uncollectible na siya, pero nag-set up ka na ng allowance. So, paano mo si-set up yung allowance? So, may dalawang method. Yung isa based on percentage of sales, yung isa based on percentage of accounts receivable. Ito, account sales ito, percentage of account sales. Pero yung iba, sinasama na rin kahit cash sales. Anyway, percentage lang naman yan. Kukuhanin mo lang naman yung allowance. Pero mas maganda siguro ibase na lang sa account sales kasi yung accounts receivable sa account sales lang. So, anong entrada? Every end of the period, magre-recognize ka ng expense. Hindi ka mag-credit sa allowance for sa accounts receivable kasi hindi pa naman tiyak na hindi magbabayad. So, mag-create ka ng allowance account. We call that allowance for bad debts. Yan ang tinatawag na allowance method. Pag debit mo ng expense, ang nakakredit sa'yo, allowance for bad debts. Hindi katulad ng direct write-off. Pag debit mo ng bad debts expense, ang nakakredit sa'yo, accounts receivable kaagad. Saka one time lang yun, hindi palagi. Kapag lang mayroong hindi talaga magbabayad. Ito, once every year, magre-recognize ka ng expense. To illustrate the allowance method, assume that the RIMACOR estimates its bad debt at 3% accounts receivable at the end of the month. The balance in accounts, let me see, okay muna, check ko muna to. The entry, okay, let me repeat. At the end of the month, the balance in accounts receivable is 10,000. The allowance for doubtful accounts has a zero balance. The entry to record the estimate is as follows. Meron kang debit na bad debts expense, which is 3% of 10,000. So, debit bad debts expense, 300, and credit allowance for doubtful accounts. Zero, nag-start ka sa zero balance kasi bago pa lang yung business. 3 months later, the RIMACOR decides to write off 5,000 of Dr. Guevara's overdue invoice. The entry to record the write-off is as follows. Dahil nag-abscond si Dr. Guevara, hindi mo na makolekta, hindi mo i-debit yung expense kaagad. I-debit mo pa rin ay ang allowance for doubtful accounts. Ang i-credit mo ay accounts receivable. Kasi nag-recognize ka na ng expense nung una. So, hindi mo na i-debit yung expense. I-debit mo na ay ang accounts, allowance for doubtful accounts. Now, setting up of allowance. Ito yung sale on account natin. Accounts receivable natin is 10,000. Tapos, ang natanggal sa accounts receivable natin ay 5,000. So, nagkaroon tayo ng debit na 5,000 allowance. May balance tayo last time na 300. So, meron tayong debit balance na 4,700. So, paano mo isa-set up yung 3% na sales on account gayong meron kang 4,700 na balance? If the account receivable did not increase nor decrease in the next accounting period, the 3% allowance will be based on the remaining accounts receivable of 5,000 and the adjusting entry necessary to update the accounts receivable will be debit bad debts expense 4,850 and credit allowance for bad debts 4,850. So, 300 ito para maging 3% uli ng accounts receivable yung balance mo, magkano yung dapat mong expense. Ang ibig sabihin kasi nito, 5,000 yan. 300 yan. Based on 3% ng 3,000. Pero ngayon, 5,000 na lang yan. Accounts receivable mo. So, 3% niyan is magkano? 100, 3% is 150 pesos na lang dapat ito. Itong credit side mo. Pero paano mo gagawin yun? I-debit mo by 4,850. Kasi mag-a-add ka ng, papawasan mo ito ng 150. Magiging 4,850 to. Para ito maging 150, which is 3% of the 5,000 remaining balance on the accounts receivable. Kasi meron kang uncollectible na 5,000. Ang natitira na lang dito is 5,000. Ang sabi, the allowance should be 3%. So, anong 3% niyan? 150. Meron kang 300, tapos may debit kang 5,000. Para maging 150 to, ano ngayon ang i-debit mo dito? So, dapat? 4,850. Ma-minus mo yung 150 dito, i-add mo dun sa difference para magkaroon ka dito at the end ng 150. Yun na medyo mahirap. Mahirap itong adjustment sa accounts receivable. Kapag nag-debit ang allowance for bad debts. Kasi i-maintain mo pa rin yung percentage ng accounts receivable. Paano ang gagawin mo para ma-maintain mo yung same percentage ng accounts receivable? So, itong una, 3%. Tama yan. Itong pangalawa, kailangan 3% pa rin. Paano siya magiging 150? What amount will be added to 5,000 or what amount will be added to the difference between 5,000 and 300 to get the 3%. So, the allowance for budget will have an adjusting entry of, ito yung accounting. Before the adjustment, ito yung account. Meron kang 300 at meron kang debit na 5,000. Tapos meron ka ditong 4,700 na difference. Kaya ang dapat mong maging balance dito ay 150. So, what amount will you put here para maging 152? So, you have to have 4,850. Kasi yun yung amount na kapag dinebit mo ito, ay magiging 150 ito. So, yung allowance mo, pag kinredit mo ito, at inad mo dito, ang lalabas ay 150. So, itong 4,850 plus 300 minus 5,000. So, ito yun eh. 5,150. So, ang matitira ay 150. 150 is 3% of 5,000. Diba? So, medyo malalim yung analysis dito. Anong amount ang idadagdag nyo dito sa 300 para pag ibinawas nyo itong 500, ang sagot nyo ay 3% ng 5,000 or 3% ng remaining accounts receivable. Kasi nakabase sa accounts receivable. 3% daw ng accounts receivable. So, hanapin nyo muna yung 3% ng accounts receivable, which is 150. Ngayon, iisipin nyo, anong amount ang kapag inad nyo sa 300 at minus nyo ang 5,000, ang difference ay 150. So, that amount will be 4,850. So, ang budget expense nyo is 4,850 at credit allowance for budgets. 4,850. Malaki, no? Di ba? Pero kung direct write-off siya, ang lalabas na answer mo ay 5,000. Kasi hindi mo na collectible yan. Credit 5,000. Ito, credit 5,000. Pero take note na itong 4,850 mas maliit. Ibig sabihin, hindi gano'ng kabigat dalahin. Kasi yung 300 noon ay na-recognize mo na as an expense. Ang actual na minainos mo lang ngayon ay yung 150. So, kumbaga, na-shoulder na yung expense noon na 150. Naghati na yung dalawang buwan. Na-distribute na kahit papano. Hindi na ganun kabigat i-recognize. Instead of 5,000, ang i-recognize mo na lang ay 4,850. Hindi mo maiiwasan kasi hindi na talaga makakabayad. Pero kung tumagal-tagal pa yung panahon, hindi ka agad yung susunod na buwan. Kunwari, mga 5 months. Mas maganda kasi mas na-distribute na yung expenses over the months, di ba? Hindi na ganun kabigat titingnan sa financial statement. Ito kasi magkasunod lang na buwan, umutang mo isang buwan. Tinasunod na buwan, hindi na nakabayad. Medyo mabigat pang tignan. Pero kung matagal yan, mas maganda yung financial statement kasi evenly distributed ang expenses. So, ito ngayon yung entrada. Debit. Ito yung account pala. So, merong debit na 4,000 na 500. Merong credit na 300. May credit na 4,850 at may ending balance tayo na 150. Yun na yung itong 150, ito na yung ipe-present natin sa financial statement natin as deduction from accounts receivable to get the net realizable value of the accounts receivable. Di ba meron tayong 5,000? Meron na tayong allowance for doubtful accounts na 150. So, ini-expect natin na ang magiging collectible natin ay 4,850 para dito sa month na ito. Setting up of allowance. Yung example natin kanina based on percentage of accounts receivable. Meron din tayong tinatawag na percentage of sales. To establish the allowance for doubtful account, the management considers customers that might default on the same consideration. Percentage of receivable method. We've already discussed that percentage of receivable, di ba? In 10,000 times 3%, that is the percentage of receivable kasi ito yung receivable natin. So, debit, expense, credit, allowance. Kapag ka ang allowance ay greater than write-off, kapag ang allowance ay greater than write-off, ang normal balance ay credit. Kapag ang allowance is less than write-off, the balance is debit. Ito yung example natin kanina, yung allowance natin. Let's see. Let's go back. Yung write-off ay mas malaki. Ito yung write-off eh. Mas malaki kaysa dun sa allowance natin na 300. So, ano nangyari? Naka-debit siya. Ang balance niya ay debit, 4,700. Ngayon, kung katulad nung una, yung sa 3%, saan ba yun? Zero yung balance natin. So, nung maglagay tayo ng allowance, naka-credit yung allowance natin. The normal balance is credit. Pero kaso pag heavy yung write-off o heavy yung hindi nagbabayad, nagkakaroon ng debit balance yung allowance for bad debts. So, yan ang ibig sabihin nitong slide na to. Kapag ang allowance ay greater than, which is normal, write-off, credit balance siya. Kapag ang allowance ay less than, write-off, meaning heavy, malaki yung pautang, kesa malaki yung hindi na-kolekta, then the allowance will have a debit balance. So, we have to make it always a credit balance. Although, nagiging debit siya, at the end of the period, pag gumawa ka na ng financial statement, kailangan i-adjust mo siya para maging credit ulit. Yun ang purpose nung bakit nag-isip tayo ng amount na malaki para maging 150 ulit. Kasi we have to bring back to credit the balance. Ito meron tayong aging method ng accounts receivable. So, ito yung mga may utang sa atin. Ito, 2,000, 1,100, 1,300, 1,500, 2,600, 2,700, 88. Ang total niya ay 100,000. Sabi 5% ang uncollectible. So, that becomes 5,000. So, pag entrada mo ng account mo, debit mo, bad debts expense, credit, allowance for bad debts, 5,000. Pero gagawa mo siya ng aging. Saan ba nanggaling yung 5,000 na yan? Hindi lahat dun sa total kasi ini-age mo yung receivable according to sa past due. Ito current. Ito 30 days past due. Ito within 30 days. Ito 30 days past due. 60 days past due. 90 days past due. Ang purpose lang nitong aging of accounts receivable ay para malaman mo kung ilang percent ang hindi mo na makokolekta sa current, ilang percent ang hindi mo makokolekta sa 30 days past due, ilang percent ang hindi mo makokolekta sa 60 days past due. Ito sa 60 dito sa 60 days past due at ito sa 90 days past due. So ito yung current, ito within 30 days. 30 days past due, 60 days past due, and 90 days past due. So, ito yung mga amount na uncollectible sa kanila. So, ang total niyan ay 5,000. Ini-evaluate mo lang gano'n ka-effective yung collection yung processes ng business. Mabilis ba tayo makakolekta? Mabagal ba tayo makakolekta? Anong gagawin natin para makolekta pa yung mga yan na matagal magbayad. Pero sa pag-record ng expense, pareho lang. You get the total and then the 5%. Itong aging method naman is just to evaluate kung paano ano yung composition ng ating doubtful accounts. So, for example, meron tayong 100,000, di ba yung natin, pautang natin. Tapos, ang sabi, 5%. So, that is 5,000. Pero may existing balance tayo sa example natin na 300. So, magkano na lang ang i-adjust natin? 4,700 na lang kasi meron tayong beginning balance na for 300. Para maging 5%, kailangan 5,000 lang. Kasi kung 5,000 din natin i-debit yung expense natin, magiging 5,300 yun, hindi na yung 5%. So, dahil meron na tayong beginning na 300, dadagdagan na lang natin ng 4,700. Yung percentage of credit sales method, hindi na to ginagamit. Ang ginagamit na lang ay ang percentage of accounts receivable. Pero just the same, just to show you kung paano ginagamit, ito yung formula niya. Prior periods actual and collectible account is equal to prior period's credit sales. So, ang basis niya ay credit sales. Percentage is, imumultiply mo lang yung percentage of sales. Tapos, para sa allowance, then you get your uncollectible account allowance. So, bad debts expense is equal to net sales times percentage estimated as uncollectible. No, ito pala yung prior periods actual uncollectible accounts over prior periods credit sales. Ito pala yung formula. Sorry, nalito na lang ako. Naantok na. Prior periods, kunyari meron kang uncollectible na actual uncollectible account. So, ano ba yung actual uncollectible account? Sa example natin, 5,000. Yung kay Dr. Guevara. Tapos, magkano yung credit sales natin? 10,000. Kunyari yung actual natin, credit sales, prior year's credit sales kasi wala naman tayong nauna pa dyan. So, makukuha mo ngayon ay magkano? Percentage of sales allowance for uncollectible account. So, 50%. Ito ngayon ang magiging expense mo kasi ito yan yung estimated uncollectible. Kung ano yung uncollectible mo, over the credit sales, yun yung magiging percentage mo. Kumbaga yung percentage mo dito ay nakabase dun sa uncollectible account mo. Yun na yung magiging basehan mo. So, parang hindi masyadong parang mababaw yung basehan ng pag-compute mo ng percentage. Parang walang masyadong hindi masyadong realistic. Kaya siguro it was favored more yung based on accounts receivable, ang mas favored na method kasi mas realistic yun So ito, kukuhanin mo yung net sales, tapos imumultiply mo sa percentage estimated as uncollectible. Ito, using this formula. So, pabago-bago yung percentage mo. Hindi siya constant. Paiba-iba. Kasi magbabase ka sa prior periods credit sales Saka yung actual uncollectible account. Actual din. So, kung meron kang actual uncollectible account, may actual uncollectible account ka over prior periods credit sales. Paano kung wala kang actual uncollectible account? Di wala kang allowance. Kaya, ang ginagamit ay ang accounts receivable. Hindi na ginagamit ito. It's no longer being used. Hindi siya realistic. Pero just the same, baka tanungin kayo, paano ba computing yung based on percentage of sales method? O percentage, kuhanin mo yung actual uncollectible account over prior period credit sales. Then that becomes your percentage of sales allowance for uncollectible. Yun ang imumultiply mo doon sa net sales. Current net sales naman to get the bad debts expense. Yung prior periods credit sales mo, and actual para lang makuha mo yung percentage of sales. Yun ang para magiging, doon mo gagamitin naman sa current net sales or net sales, total or credit. It depends sa policy kung total ba yan or credit, times percentage na nakuha mo dito. Hindi katulad dun sa based on accounts receivable, pag-aaralan mo yung trend ng business. Pag-iisipan mo kung through data, ma-determine mo kung paano ang balik ng collection sa'yo over the years na negosyo na nag-engage sa business. hindi ka lang manghuhula dito kasi parang hindi realistic na yung uncollectible mo yung magiging basehan mo mismo. Kasi hindi naman ganun palagi. Okay, that will do. So that will be the last part on the accounts receivable. Eto may example. Kunyari bad debts, meron kang credit sales na 5,000, 50,000. Tapos ang nakuha mong percentage dun sa formula ay 1%. So i-apply mo ito dun sa credit sales mismo, current credit sales. Ito yung ratio na galing dun sa previous prior year credit sales and actual uncollectible account. So ito ngayon ang magiging allowance mo 500. You make the same entry, debit bad debts expense and credit allowance for bad debts. Allowance method pa rin siya. Pero magkaiba sila ng basis ng computation. Ito based on credit sales. Tapos kinukuha mo yung ratio using actual uncollectible account over prior year's credit sales. Yung sa accounts based on accounts receivable, yung mga percentage doon, pinag-aaralan based on trends or based on past records. Kung ano ba yung, paano ba ang turnover ng receivable, gaanong kabilis na kukolekta yung mga pautang. Yun ang nagiging basehan. Kaya mas reliable yung based on accounts receivable. That is why hindi na ito ginagamit ngayon. Ginagamit na lang as generally accepted ay ang based on receivable. Mas maganda pa nga yun kasi mas maganda talaga yun kasi merong aging of accounts receivable. Mas nasusuportahan yung estimate ng allowance. Okay? We're done with our discussion. Thank you for watching this video. Please follow the next discussion that will be for another account after ng accounts receivable. What do we have? Merchandise inventory. So, medyo mahirap din sa merchandise inventory. Marami tayong i-discuss doon kasi merong method of recording inventories, periodic and perpetual. Yun ang pag-aaralan natin next time. God bless. Stay safe. Till our next video. Please share para mas marami kayong kakwentuhan. Tatanungin nyo, tama ba yung sinabi ni ma'am? Naintindihan mo ba yung sinabi ni ma'am? So, mas magandang marami kayong magkakasama na nanonood ng same lesson so you can discuss. You can make comments if you want to para malinawan natin. Sometimes, nire-review ko yung video ko, nagkakamali ako sa ibang mga words. Pero pagbalik ko natatama naman. I hope you notice that if you really intently watch this video. Bye-bye. See you again next video.